Hey everybody, this is Perch. We got a mail about Kingdom Come. Kingdom Come's, I love that series. I think it was a great comic, great graphic novel, and it's one of those comics that I feel is there's a handful of things that if we could focus on a little bit more as a group, it might kind of tilt the some of the angst that we have with each other. Because Mark Waid wrote Kingdom Come, and when you read that, it's a great book, and by and large, even the people who are the most anti Mark Waid people possible will say, I did like Kingdom Come. And I think if people can if you can hold in your head and your heart that people you don't like can create things that you do, or vice versa, then we're at least off to a slightly better start. Then we can at least focus the energy to people that we don't like who write terrible things or draw terrible things. That's a healthier, and plus there's plenty of stuff on that mountain to tackle. So there's no shortage. Um, Speaking of people I don't like, I think I finally found a Taylor Swift song that I like. That makes me not despise Taylor Swift, and it's this anti-hero one she sings. And the reason is, in that song, she talks about being in hell, and I'm like, that makes me feel good about Taylor Swift. Is this idea that she's dead in hell? So okay, that got a little dark. I'm joking. I'm joking. I don't like that song either. Anyway, man, my absolute nightmare: trapped in an Arby's with Taylor Swift music coming out of the speaker. Like, no, no. Anyway, um, all right, let's read this mail. It says, "Hey, Perch." Um, it's okay, got to get that. Okay, say sorry. Hey, Perch, I've been inspired by the Nightfall mail to write my own. Okay, excellent. Like the writer of that mail, I too am a toddler, being born in 1996, you asshole. And so the stories I have read have been around for quite some time. So I finished reading Kingdom Come recently. I don't know much about its critical reception. It was very strong, but I thought it was pretty good, just not great. The idea had more potential than the execution showed. Four issues just weren't enough. I totally agree with that, or at least not enough for me. This was a big story in terms of scale, and I would have liked it if it had given more time to really show the new status quo for superhumans, linger a bit more on the decision making process the old heroes had for retiring, as well as how various different heroes and villains reacted as the world grew increasingly more brutal. Now, in fairness, they've done kind of tie-ins and spin-offs and other little series, kind of doing exactly what you said. And I'm sure there's somebody at DC right now who's like, his ears just perked up, and he's like, "Wait a minute! I think I heard somebody say that we could go back and mine, popular events for more comics." I don't. I my my spin-off series sense is tingling. Anyway, they did do some. I agree with you. The original series felt rushed, and especially if you've been reading a lot of comics in the last 10 years, it felt super rushed because things are far more decompressed now. I think it's if Kingdom Come came out today, it would be a 24 issue series. It would go very hard in the other direction. But I agree. There's a lot of material in Kingdom Come that I think didn't get explored, and as a result, felt kind of shallow. That is increasingly some of the problem with a lot of comics from the 80s and 70s that you'll see where they just feel like they're too short, like they're missing out on a bunch of character development, a bunch of other things that they can do, and it's kind of a difference in storytelling. That would be a great topic to get Eric Breen on and talk to him about, just kind of differences in between then and now of compression and decompression. Anyway, back to the mail. Also, there needed to be more time spent building up to the final battle itself. I felt a little disappointed by the climactic showdown, given that it was built up as a clash to end them all, and only to really seem like what it was: a prison breakout, a skirmish. There was talk of it potentially spilling out over half the world if it wasn't ended, but it never really felt like that was the case. Still cool, sure, but I could have had a lot more weight to it. Personally, I feel like the only way to have a battle like this feel truly epic would be if all of DC's heroes and villains were aligned there on the battlefield against each other in a showdown. With Kingdom Come, most of the combatants are these new unknowns created for this story, so it just doesn't give that thrill, even if it is, of course, more fitting for the themes of the particular story. Similar to how I felt about Crisis on Infinite Earths, too, actually. I wasn't familiar with a lot of the old characters. Okay, that's kind of a different thing that you're going into now, but that's all right. And so I wasn't too invested in the battles or moved by their deaths. Understandable, given that it's like turning into the last episode of a show's 20th season. It did give a very effective sense of scale, though, even though it was a slog to get through. Okay, so that's another issue. Is you could tell a story. Let's say I don't want to go too deep into this because it probably is a topic for a different video. But um, one of the ways I kind of gauge a great writer from a good writer is in an event or in a comic or whatever else. If I don't know some of the characters, if I'm like you said, if I'm coming in mid-season, and with comics, no matter what people try and do with Marvel now, jumping on points, number ones, everybody comes on in some form or fashion in the middle of the narrative. Comics have been going a long time. Even if you start with a number one issue, very quickly you're going to move to something that is not a number one issue, and it's you're going to have to kind of catch up. A great writer makes it feel important even though you don't know who the characters are. And I argue that was one of the values of Watchmen, is Alan Moore did effectively do that for a lot of the characters in that story. He did, by the time they were being killed off and other things were happening, you did get a feeling of weight and gravity to the story. It mattered, even though you're coming in fresh with these characters. A good writer tells a good event, and I would say Kingdom Come is like this, where it is a good event. You do enjoy it. The story is powerful and everything else, but you still don't, kind of what you were referring to. You don't have that deep emotional attachment to the characters. The writer doesn't quite get you to feel the deaths in the way that you want. But anyway, that's it's an interesting concept. All right, finish this milk. Infinite Crisis, which I also only read recently, had a similar scenario with an older Superman growing fed up as he watches the world grow darker. I like that story better than the other two I've mentioned, even if it had Superman's happy ending from Crisis on Infinite Earths get torn apart. Anyway, Kingdom Come asks if humans are being held back from their full potential by superheroes, and if maybe we'd be better off without them. The obvious answer is no, simply given the frequency of alien invasions in comics. Without superheroes to fight off cosmic threats, we'd be under dominion of some space warlord already. It's a legitimate question, only in a world that hasn't already become aware of extraterrestrials. Yeah, or extraordinary threats or things. I mean, if you think about it, if there were no superheroes, no heroes at all, but there were still villains and other things going on, I mean, you could see the entire planet being ruled by Penguin or the Joker. I mean, or even lower level villains could rule the entire world simply because there's no heroes around, so it would be fairly easy to whip humans into shape. Anyway, at the end of the story, superheroes decide they need to drastically change the dynamic, working with humanity instead of hovering above them. Okay, but we need to see more elaboration on what did that really mean. Do they still step in to fight crime? Do they hold off and see if the police can handle it first? Will Batman still be sending his bat drones around Gotham, or has he given up the whole crusade now that he has a hospital clinic thing? Some additional points. Captain Atom's death causing widespread destruction in Kingdom Come was strikingly similar to the incident which triggered Marvel's Civil War. I remember, and there was a lot of claims that was copied from Kingdom Come. It's hard to say. Mark Waid and Mark Miller did work closely together. Or, I don't know. They did a pitch together. Certainly at DC, it's become somewhat legendary. The idea of a superhero or a character, in this case in Civil War, it was a villain, but the idea of kind of widespread destruction, it's been done before Kingdom Come too. So this is not, it's I'm not in the camp of one was stolen from the other. I was reminded of Injustice a lot too, with an incident of the Joker as a big reason why the story happens, him being involved with Lois Lane's death, as well as Superman taking more control and creating a supervillain prison. I guess Kingdom Come must be pretty influential. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely think Injustice, and frankly, a lot of Tom Taylor's storytelling absolutely borrows from Kingdom Come in many, many ways. And if next time you pick up a Tom Taylor book, have Kingdom Come in your mind, because even the the John Kent Superboy and Gamora and the other things he were doing. There's a lot of beats that are from Kingdom Come in that story, for sure. It would be cool to see an animated series or movie in Alex Ross's style. I have no idea how these painted images would look in motion, but it would definitely be unique. Anyway, be safe. Okay. So thank you for the mail and kind of the walk down Kingdom Come. Like I said in the last video, and I'll say it again in this one, I appreciate your thoughts on comics like that. So if you want to write in and just talk about a series you love, doesn't matter what it is. A couple of people made comments of they really liked the Clone Saga, even though it's kind of derided in comic history, but they still like it. If you're one of those people, why don't you write in and tell me why, and we can talk through it and get some conversation going. But Kingdom Come is a book. I think you could look at comics in a couple different ways. You could say, what are the best comics in all time, or the most influential comics of all time? In the influential camp, I think that, as I mentioned before, Watchmen is one that almost everyone always talks about, and it certainly is. The idea of kind of deconstructed superheroes and kind of that entire narrative way of storytelling, hell, even the 9-panel grid, it's been incredibly influential. Kingdom Come is right up there, not as noteworthy, not as known as as Watchmen. But I feel like if I'm predicting kind of where things could go and what could happen, I can picture a world where Kingdom Come becomes a movie, not an animated movie, but at some point Warner decides to actually make it as a film, and people kind of rediscover the comic. It gets printed out. It's already been printed, sold way more graphic novels, I think, at this point than original floppies. But still, it doesn't have the same kind of elevated presence in comics of recognition as Watchmen. But it is definitely influential. A lot of comics came after it. A lot of people have borrowed from that storyline, and it's definitely a big deal in terms of comics. So, I like kind of you said, I liked it. I thought it was a very good series. I thought it did a lot of unique things at the time. I absolutely agree that it's one of those comics, and you don't say this very often, that could have used 8 issues instead of 4. There was a lot of potential on that table. Now, I'll leave you with this. I would rather have a comic series leave potential on the table than dive into every single corner and suck all of the oxygen out of the room for it. So I prefer something like a Kingdom Come, which had 4 issues and left me wanting more, than kind of what they have done with Watchmen, with a multiple kind of nods and ties into it, and miniseries. Like they've gone to that Watchmen well a lot lately, and I think it's cheapened that comic. I sound like Alan Moore. Pray to my snake god. Anyway, I feel like Watchmen kind of buried itself, whereas Kingdom Come, having that desire of I wish there were more stories I could get, I think is a good thing. So anyway, let me know your thoughts on Kingdom Come. Does it deserve a sequel? Would you like to see more? All that kind of stuff in the comments below. And thanks for listening.